Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we're going to be talking about Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver Chris Godwin, a guy who we haven't actually talked a lot about this year. We've talked a lot about Baker Mayfield, we've talked a lot about Mike Evans, we've talked a lot about Rashad White, but Chris Godwin has been a guy that hasn't necessarily been coming up in a lot of conversations about the Buccaneers this year. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper, see where Chris Godwin is at in this Buccaneers offense so far this year, and kind of dive into a little bit as to why this may be the case that we aren't talking about Chris Godwin that much this year. So firstly, I want to talk about the stats. So far, Chris Godwin is at 85 targets on the year, 53 receptions, 606 receiving yards. He is at 11.4 yards per reception. That is the third lowest in his career, not including 2021 and 2022, where he both had 1,000 yards that year. In terms of his yards per game, it's the second lowest in his career, behind only his rookie season at 50.5. He is currently not on pace, I believe, to get 1,000 yards on the season. Now, why is that the case? Because everybody knows what Chris Godwin can do, right? 1,333 receiving yards in 2019, 1,103 receiving yards in 2021. Literally, last year, over 1,000 yards. So it's not a matter of Chris Godwin not being able to showcase or not being able to get the job done, I guess, so to speak. We've seen this time and time again from Chris Godwin in the past. He's had a very impressive career up to this point for the Bucs. So what's going on? And a lot of people are going to point to the last game where Chris Godwin only got 3 targets, 0 receptions for 0 yards. He did get that one rushing attempt for 19 yards and a touchdown on an end around. That was a great play. You love to see that. But the overall, numbers for Godwin this year have certainly been down from what we've seen in the past, right? In terms of receptions, it's the second lowest of his career at this point. Now, this could obviously change. It may end up being somewhere, I think whenever the season's done, it'll probably be the 4th lowest of his career, if not it'll probably be number 4, if not number 3 on his career, but still, it's definitely a step down from what we saw in 2019, 2021, and in 2022. When asked about Chris Godwin and if it was surprising that Chris Godwin didn't have any catches in the last game versus the recent team the Tampa Bay Buccaneers played, the Carolina Panthers, Todd Bowles said this: "I just saw that we were subbing him out a lot. Obviously, he's a little nicked up, so he's not totally 100%. Nobody is, but he's probably banged up more than most. For him to get the run for us was huge for him. I think it helped him out a lot. It helped us out a lot, so it was good to see him get in the end zone." Then what was so interesting to me is Chris Godwin's wife actually took to Instagram shortly after these quotes were made. And the bottom one here, I'm going to zoom in on this so we can really take a look at what was said by Chris Godwin's wife. It's going to be a little bit blurred here, but it says, "I'm not sure why we are just blatantly lying here. Regardless of how banged up Chris is, he continues to work his butt off. Hasn't missed a game, continues to run great routes and get open. I don't know why things are the way they are. This isn't my team to coach. But this lying on Chris and implying negativity on his work ethic is infuriating. Let's not act like he has to be subbed out so much more than usual, when in fact he's been playing just the same." And then it goes on to talk about some different receipts and whatnot. One more for good measure. "No, you weren't. Stop lying on Chris. We were subbing him out a lot. Obviously, he's nicked up a little bit percent. He's not 100%. So I just wanted to take a look real quick, too, at the overall snap counts for Mr. Chris Godwin this year. You take a look at, if I can find it, these are his game logs. He actually ended up playing more offensive snaps in this game where he only had 3 targets and 1 run for 19 yards and a touchdown than he did the previous week. And in fact, even, make numbers more interesting, this is actually almost in the middle in terms of offensive snaps for Chris Godwin this year. So, to say this, like we were subbing him out a lot, that's not accurate. But I will say, a little weird to say implying negativity on Chris Godwin's work ethic. I didn't necessarily see that in the quote from Todd Bowles, but to say that they were subbing him out a lot, that's simply not accurate. I mean, you look, there's 5 games where Chris Godwin had less snaps and much more targets and opportunities than he did in that Carolina Panthers game. So that's really interesting. This is certainly the lowest game where Chris Godwin has had opportunities by far, and it's not even close to the lowest game in terms of snap numbers that he has had. So I don't necessarily know what the situation is with Chris Godwin right now, why he isn't getting as many opportunities in the past couple of weeks. Because if you look, or I guess even the last, week or two or so, Godwin's numbers haven't been crazy. And you've really kind of seen this dip after the game versus the Atlanta Falcons. You saw 7 targets, 5 catches, 54 yards. 6 targets, 2 catches, 16 yards. 6 targets, 4 catches, 54 yards. 7 targets, 6 catches, 39 yards. 7 targets, 3 catches, 45 yards. 3 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards. Right? So, after that Atlanta Falcons game, you really saw a bit of a dip in the overall production of Chris Godwin. And it's notable, right? I know a lot of people are big fans of Chris Godwin, want to see him more involved in the offense, and I agree with that 100%. It's obviously great whenever Mike Evans goes out there and is able to do all the different types of things that he does, but it would certainly be beneficial to the Bucs to get Chris Godwin more involved in the offense. Now, to Todd Bowles' point, he was hurt coming into this upcoming game. He did have a neck injury that almost, at least according to injury reports and whatnot that were reported, almost, had him not playing in the game in the first place. So I think that I agree with Todd here saying that he's not totally 100%. He is a little bit banged up. The subbing out part, that is not necessarily something that is true. That's just a lie by Todd Bowles. For lack of a better way of phrasing it, that's just not accurate, okay? But in terms of work ethic and criticizing that, don't necessarily see that. I think the point, though, is to get Chris Godwin more involved in this offense and see him go out there and just do the things that we've seen Chris Godwin do in the past. I don't have to tell you guys how good Chris Godwin is. We've seen it throughout his entire career. I mean, again, folks, literally coming off of 2 1,000-yard seasons, 3 in his past 4 years for the Bucs. We know what Chris Godwin can do. You just have to see more targets thrown his way. You just have to see more things worked Chris Godwin into the offense. That's what you need to see. So, bit of an interesting situation, folks. Would love to get your guys' thoughts and opinions about this down in the comments section below as to why you feel like Chris Godwin hasn't been involved in the offense and what you feel like the solution is. And also, if you agree with some of the quotes from Todd Bowles as well as Chris Godwin's wife that we talked about here on social media. Not necessarily a quote, but just an opinion from her. So, and by the way, I don't blame her for having those opinions. Obviously, she's going to have the back of her significant other. I don't blame her at all. I think all of us would do that in the exact same situation. But there's a lot to this situation. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions about it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed. As always, guys, I'll see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.